Welcome to the Bywords Show. I'm your host, Hannah Hughes. Bywords is all about equipping women for purposeful living by starting conversations, celebrating stories, and inspiring faith. In a world that applauds the hustle, I'm here to help you break free from the lies and come back to what really matters. It's time to get real, get rooted in truth, and come alive in relationship with Jesus so you can show up to each day with intention and confidence no matter where you're at in your story. Here we believe that embracing our stories brings hope, healing, and purpose to the process, and sharing our stories helps others do the same. Whether you're looking for a midweek faith refresh, practical tools for pursuing your dreams, or just need some good old-fashioned girl talk, you're in the right place. Grab your latte and let's dive in. Hey there, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Bywords Show. Today is the day. So glad you're here. And I just have to say, today is a special day because we are currently in May, which means the Bywords podcast has been around for 4 years. Wild. Like, I can't even wrap my mind around the past 4 years and all that has happened. And oh, wow, I just have so much to say and so much in my heart. And the first and most pressing thing is a huge thank you to you, the listeners who have been here, who are listening, who make this podcast worth putting out into the world. I am just so grateful for you coming along on this journey. I know it has been quite a ride, and we have just grown together and had so many conversations and just this beautiful story of what God's doing that I could not have ever imagined or dreamed of or made happen on my own. And I'm just so thankful for you being here for all of that. Yeah, it's just wild to me. Every time I see that we've got new listeners, new subscribers, new reviews, you guys, it just blows me away. I'm so grateful that you would come hang out in my tiny little corner of the internet with me and just spend some time here listening to me share my heart. It blows me away. I just feel so honored to be able to share this space with you. So thank you so much for being here, and happy 4 years. I seriously cannot believe it. We've come a long way. And so today I wanted to share an updated version of my testimony and the Byword story in case you're newer here or in case you just want a refresher, because I have to say also, I just finished reading my own book, Waking Up, Living Open. I wrote this book when I was 20 years old, published it when I was 21. I'm now 30. And so I have not really gone back and read through this since then. And I've shared recently on the podcast and on social media about how I was kind of hesitant to do that because I don't know, like I wrote it so long ago and I was like, what if what I wrote is like weird, or if I don't agree with it, or like, I was a tiny baby when I wrote this. In some ways reading it, I'm like, yeah, that was very much written by a 20-year-old, but also like, wow, like the deep, rich work God has done in my life from the beginning. Like I'm so blown away and I'm so grateful. And so revisiting just my own story has been such a testimony to my own heart that God has always been the same good, loving, sovereign friend through this whole story. And I just needed the reminder. It's so funny, like reading through the Psalms, or even like I'm reading the Bible in the year right now, and stories from First and Second Chronicles, Second Samuel, and Psalms. And it's so crazy seeing how often these stories are recounted. And, like we see biblically, historically, how these stories were passed down from generation to generation and written over and over again. And some of the Psalms seem kind of repetitive. And it's like, well, that makes sense because we need that. Like, how quick are we to forget in our humanness the faithfulness of God? In my own life, through a tough season, and honestly, in any season, I just need the reminder constantly of how good God has been. And I feel like that's one of the best ways we can stir our faith, build our faith, remain rooted in the kindness and truth of God's word, is that He is who He says He is. He will do what He says He will do. He's always been that way. He always will be. And our testimonies are one of the most powerful tools that we have for building our own faith and also the faith of others. It's this ripple effect of healing. And you guys know that I say here in the Bywords community that embracing our stories really helps bring hope and healing and freedom to the process. And when we share our testimonies, we help others do the same. I love testimonies. Y'all know I'm so passionate about the power of our stories over here. That's what my book, Waking Up, is all about. And so today, I just want to share a recap of my own personal testimony, an updated version with, some cliff notes from me, some updated things, and then also just a reminder, this full circle moment of where Byword started and what it means and where we're going and how this involves you. So, if you're in for that, buckle up, let's get into it. My story begins in Texas, where I was born and raised to my parents who are wonderful, and they brought me to church like the Sunday after I was born. So I grew up in a loving home, a Christian home where I was always around believers. Like the church was always a part of my life. Faith was always a part of my life in some capacity. And so that's the environment I grew up in. I have a brother, David, who's 2 years younger than I am, who lives in Colorado, really close to me, and our families are really close. And then I have an adopted sister, Curry, who is 9 years younger than I am. She was adopted from Ethiopia when I was 13 and she was 4. And so that's kind of my background. And, growing up, it was just a normal life, nothing too eventful about that time. But when I started getting into junior high, I started experiencing for the first time this insecurity, this kind of self-consciousness, and I had moments before that. Like I've told you guys about how when I was in second grade, my friends told me I was fat. Getting into junior high, becoming more aware of my body, becoming more aware of like, oh, people have a perspective of me that is maybe different from how I perceive myself. And what does this mean? And why are people making these assumptions and these judgments based on how I look or what they think? And is this true? And how do I reconcile all of this? Right. And so I started to become really self conscious and developing like these body image issues around the time that I was 12. So pretty early on. And I developed an eating disorder. I didn't know it at the time, but I started giving away my lunch at school, started to hide in the bathroom during lunchtime. Like I would just give away my lunch and then go sit by myself. I was just very insecure. I struggled a lot with fear and anxiety, like crippling fear. Like I didn't want to talk to people. I was nervous all the time, very shy, very quiet. That's kind of where all of this started to boil and come up to the surface. Around the same time, like I said, when I was 13, we adopted my sister. So, right when I started going through some of these kind of critical moments in my development, we have this new sister who speaks no English, had never been to America, like all of these changes in our family. It was culture shock for her, it was culture shock for us. So much processing in that. And I felt like I just got lost in the mix. Everyone is so focused on her, which, makes sense. Everyone's trying to help her get adjusted. And I just felt like kind of invisible through that time. And so I kind of took advantage of that, like where I was able to kind of get away with these things I was struggling with. The eating disorder started to develop, and I started to struggle more with mental health by the time I was in eighth grade. And so going into high school, I had had some experiences, my first boyfriend, my first breakup, experiencing some things that felt really big and really hard. And I started cutting and engaging in self harm. I just, at that point in my life, felt like I wasn't loved. I wasn't good enough. No one cares about me. No one's paying attention to me. So I don't matter. Like I had this really, really distorted sense of myself, this view of myself, of my body. And I just felt miserable and so hopeless. I was like, what is the point of this? I've been going to church at this point. I went to a Christian school. I had Bible class every day, and I knew a lot about God, but at this point it was just knowledge to me, and it wasn't a real relationship, and it wasn't a faith that I owned for myself. And so I'm going through all of this, really struggling with what's the point of my life? What is my purpose? Do I even care? Does any of this matter? And around that time, my family decided to switch churches. We started going to this new church that was actually the same as the school we were going to. One night, we had dropped my brother off for some sports practice, and I had some friends who were there because the youth group at our new church was going to this youth rally. And they were like, "Hey, Hannah, come to this youth rally with us." And at the time, I was like, you know what? I had experienced some bullying in the youth group at our church that we were going to before. Like I said, I was experiencing a lot of these issues where I felt like, I don't know if this church thing is for me. I believe in God, but Christians kind of suck, you know? So this is kind of the state I was at in my faith. And so I was really not into it, but my friends talked me into going to this youth rally. We go to this youth rally. It was for a bunch of churches and youth groups in our area. We go, and at the time, y'all, the song The Stand by Hillsong was the jam. It was like, it was everywhere. And I've always been very passionate about music, about worship, and that song was speaking to my heart, and I was obsessed. And so we get to this youth rally. I have this moment of like bartering with God. I'm like, okay, you know what? I don't want to be here. I don't know why I let them talk me into coming, but here I am. And if you are real, God, like if this matters, like just give me some sort of sign. Like let them play The Stand or something. And of course, the next song was The Stand. And so I'm thinking, okay, you've got my attention. The service carries on. And I remember there was this altar call given. I don't even remember what it was about, but it was something to the effect of, if you are tired of playing church, if you want to get real about your faith, just come up here, we want to pray. And I write about this in the book, how I just felt my feet get up, like my heart went faster than my body could carry me down there. It just, I felt like God was just, he was just calling me to something. And so I get up there to the front for this altar call, and they're like, okay, we're just going to pray. So they pray, they have us hold hands with the person next to us. And after this prayer, the guy who's to my left, it's this man that I didn't know, he looks over to me and he's just like, God has such good plans for your life. And I'm thinking, sweet, like this is super cool. Go back to my seat. I'm like, starting to get a little hyped up. Like, this is okay. Maybe there's something here. And that guy that had just said that to me ended up being the speaker for the night. He shared his testimony. I don't even remember the details of it now. I just remember God being there and having an encounter with him that changed my life. For the first time, like faith was real to me. God was real to me. I felt him, I experienced him, and something changed that night that marked my life going forward. So I go to school the next day. I go into my Bible class. I'm like freaking out, telling my Bible teacher, I got saved. I'm a Christian, like for real. Like my faith is real. Like, it's just this high, right? Like this spiritual high, like that church camp feeling of like, oh my gosh, God is doing something. And I had this false assumption that now my life's going to be perfect, and now all my problems are going to get resolved, and now it's great, like I'm a Christian, like I gave my life to the Lord, and so now we're going nowhere but up, right? And wouldn't you know it, right after that, life got really hard. Things at home were tense, just a lot going on with the adjustment with my sister. And my brother and I are both getting into high school now, and things are just getting crazy. I'm experiencing mental health struggles more intensely than I had before. I don't know what to do with that. My parents don't really know what to do with that. And so I find myself in this moment of questioning, God, where are you? I thought we just had this moment and you were going to like take care of this for me. Like, why is my life suddenly feeling worse than it ever has been? This is not what I expected. And so I come to this place in my life and in my faith where I don't know what to do with this pain that I'm feeling, because I thought God was good. And what I thought that meant is that my circumstances are now going to be good and everything's going to be resolved and perfect and beautiful. But that's not the case, as we know. Being a Christian doesn't mean we're exempt from suffering. What it means is that we have hope in the midst of suffering. And that's something that took me a really long time to figure out. So time goes on, and my mental health is really, really getting to a low point, and I am realizing this is not good. I'm really desperately trying to cling to this faith that I had now been growing with the Lord, and thankfully I had some mentors and people that I could trust who were teaching me things about like how to pray and how do we talk to God about this stuff. And like I'm really leaning into my love of worship, and I'm trying to do the good Christian stuff. I'm trying to do the right things, right? Because I'm thinking, okay, if I do all the right things, then maybe God will take care of me. Like, am I struggling because I'm missing something? Am I doing something wrong? I just, in my baby faith, didn't understand. And so I'm wrestling with all of this. I'm trying to figure out how to get, back to this high in my faith again. I come to this moment where I am really struggling. Things are falling apart. My eating disorder has progressed. I'm still engaging in self harm. My friendships at school are falling apart. Like I said, going through this really crappy breakup experience. And I went to this friend's birthday party. I remember this specific night of September 2010. I was a sophomore in high school. At this party, I had a friend who came to me and just told me something that really hurt me. And it was kind of like the final straw. I now have no one that cares about me. These people don't want me here. I'm struggling and no one knows what to do with it. Like part of this breakup that I went through was the guy didn't want me to be so negative. Like I was struggling with mental health, anxiety, depression. I wasn't diagnosed yet, but it was really, really tough. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to ask for help. Of course, these other kids didn't know how to handle it either. And so I'm just feeling totally alone in my pain. I decide this night at the party, when I get home, that's it. I'm done. This life isn't worth living for me anymore. I believe in God. And at this point, I honestly think that the best option would be for me to end my life so I can just go be with him and leave this pain and leave these people because I'm just making life difficult for everyone. I don't feel like I'm loved. I'm just a burden. Like I'm truly believing these lies and these things about myself, my life, my body, my relationships, and about God that were not true. But I got to such a low point that I decided that I was going to go home that night and end my life. So September 2010, I come home from this party. I'm in my bedroom. I've got this bottle of pills and I am just crying. And what I didn't know at the time is that same night, someone from the party realized how bad it had gotten for me. Like I was not doing good and it was visible. Like it was obvious to the people around me that I was struggling. And this person had told their mom that they were worried about me. And that mom called my mom that night and was like, telling her, "Hey, my daughter sees this. Like, are you aware this is what Hannah's going through?" So that night, my mom realizes everything that's going on and the severity of it for the first time. And so I'm upstairs in my room planning to end my life. My mom is downstairs in her room, which is below mine, and she's just praying. She's interceding for me and she is just going to war on my behalf. And I woke up the next morning. I don't remember anything else about that night. I just remember crying and I fell asleep, I guess. And then I woke up the next morning and it was a Sunday morning. So my parents took me to church. So we get to church that next morning. My parents had my siblings go home with a friend. And I'm thinking, this is weird. Like, we're supposed to go to lunch as a family. Okay. I'm just thinking, like, okay, I'll just go home. Like, I just need to get through this day and then I can try again tonight. Well, my parents say, we're going to go have this meeting. And it was with our youth pastor's wife, who was also a teacher at my school, who was one of the people that I had confided in. So they all sit me down and they're like, "Hey, this is what we hear is going on. Is this true?" At that point, I'm no longer able to hide that I am cutting. I'm really struggling mentally. And it's gotten to a point where I need help. I very obviously need help. And so for the first time, I realized that there is another option. I remember my dad saying, "We just want to help you. What can we do to help you?" And that is not the response I expected at all. Like at first I was really frustrated and angry about the betrayal. I was like, found out, like that stings. But then I realized, when I thought my parents were going to be angry and disappointed in me, they actually were just desperate for me. Like they loved me. They wanted to help me. They didn't know, they didn't understand, but they wanted to show up how they could to help me. And so from there, I started going to counseling for my mental health. I got diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder, clinical depression, all these things. I got medicated, and my mom starts taking me to therapy. Things weren't really getting better because at the time, my parents didn't know about my eating disorder. They knew about my cutting, they knew about my mental health stuff, but I was hiding this one thing. I was like, this is going to be my little secret that I'm just going to keep safe over here. But, nothing hidden stays hidden forever, right? And so one day I'm at my psychiatrist's office with my mom and she's sitting next to me while we're checking in with the doctor, and my mom just like starts tearing up, and me and the doctor are like, "Hello, what's going on here?" And my mom just says, I think she's making herself throw up. I think she has an eating disorder. And so again, I'm faced with this moment of exposure that is so painful and excruciating and raw and vulnerable. But I'm like, I can't hide this anymore. I have to be honest. Like, I know that I need help. Here's my moment. I'm outed, And so I I admit to her and to my doctor, yeah, I have this eating disorder. So I start going to a nutritionist for therapy for my eating disorder as well. I did outpatient therapy rehab program for a while, and it was a lot. So I'm all in this healing journey that I didn't ask for. And in the middle of all of this, I'm wrestling through my faith and I'm trying to figure out the meaning of this life that now I wanted to escape, but here I am. I'm in this tension of like, is it worth it to keep going? I still don't have this hope, but at the same time, I see that maybe there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Like I thought that all hope was lost, but I'm experiencing this love from my parents and from people that I thought had given up on me. I thought the whole world was against me, and now I'm experiencing for the first time Christians who are actually looking like Jesus. And I hadn't experienced that before. I started going to a youth group with my friend at another church when I was in high school, and I started making friends with these people who were they were choosing this faith journey. Like they were choosing this relationship with God and they were actively pursuing him. And that was something I really hadn't seen before because like I said, I grew up in church. I went to private Christian school my whole life. I'm talking first to 12th grade, graduated with 20 people in my class, most of which I had known since first grade. And so, we had chapel at school, we had Bible class, but we were there because we were supposed to be there. Like it wasn't something that people were choosing to do. It was like, yeah, our parents put us in this school. I go to church because my parents take me. But for the first time, I was at this youth group that these kids were going to because they wanted to be there. And there was something so real and refreshing about that. And I wanted it. I craved it so bad. And so I started, making these friends with these people who were really pursuing the Lord. And I was like, whoa, there's something here and I want it. And so I start pursuing this relationship with the Lord. I'm experiencing healing for the first time in my life. And when things start getting better, again, I'm faced with this opposition where now I'm having complications from my eating disorder. I finally want the recovery. I finally want the healing process. But now I have these things coming against me. And again, I'm just at this place of like, Lord, I don't understand. But for the first time, I'm willing to say, have your way. If it means going through the process and going through the hard thing to get to the healing and freedom you have for me, I'm willing to say yes. And so that was the first time in my faith journey where I felt like it was becoming real. I started seeing a Christian therapist. And so I was going to counseling where I was able to process both mental health and faith, which was a new thing for me at the time. Like this is 2010s. And so there wasn't much of a mental health conversation going on in the church and faith world. And so I find myself in my teen years on this journey of discovering this God who is so real and who is so close to me in the midst of these things I'm struggling with. I have this real hope and sense of purpose for my future. Through that youth group I was going to, met some friends who were going to this Bible college called Christ for the Nations in Dallas. And I was serving on the worship team there and getting really passionate just about my faith journey and feeling this call to more. I had these plans for what I wanted to do for college, but during my junior and senior years, I'm connecting with these friends. I sense God shifting in my heart. And it was, again, this thing that was like, okay, I don't know. I'm figuring out how to hear God's voice. And then my friend invites me to come sit in on one of his classes at the Bible college in his worship class. And I go to this class and I start going to these events at the Bible school. And I'm thinking, this is what I'm made for. And so, change of plans. My senior year, I decided to go to this Bible college. So my path is set. I decided to go to Christ for the Nations Institute and things are looking up. I have this sense of purpose in my life where I feel called to write. I had always been a writer. I'd always loved, journaling through my process. And it's so beautiful looking back because so much of my book, Waking Up, is taken directly from journal entries and blog posts and things that I wrote down during those years that I was struggling with all of that. So through my junior high and high school years, I documented everything in my faith journey, those raw, honest moments of the Lord in my journals. And I am so thankful for that because even now, reading this book, there are things in there that I'm like, wow, I can't believe like God, you did this. Like you knew from the beginning. You spoke to me in moments when I didn't know how to hear you. I didn't understand. I had these wrong ideas about faith and life and purpose, but he still showed up and he worked with my brokenness and my messiness and my wrongheadedness and all of it. And I'm just so grateful. And so my senior year, 18 years old. I'm feeling like fired up again for this call I feel on my life to lead worship and to speak and to write and sharing my story. I started dreaming about writing these books, and I actually started drafting things for this book waking up when I was in high school. And so just crazy full circle moment. But one thing I didn't write about in the book is right before graduation, I was sexually abused by two of my friends, and then a month after that, I was raped by somebody else. In this season where I feel like the pieces are finally falling into place, I finally have this sense of my purpose. This happens. And I'm like, you know what? I can't deal with this right now. My life is on a good track. At the time, I'm really a perfectionist. I'm trying to just be a good Christian, and this is where I draw the line. I can't deal with this. So I didn't tell anybody. And I just tried to justify it as you do. Maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought. Maybe I'm not like really a victim. People have it worse than that. And so I don't know. Like, I don't want to talk about it. I need to be the good Christian. I need to step up. Like, I've got this life and this purpose ahead of me. And so I just move on. I go to Bible college. I have this experience my first year there where God just does a deep work in my heart. And I end up getting off my medications and going through the process that became my book, Love Is, which is the devotional, my first book that I published into the world. And it was just a sweet time in my life. And then my second year at Christ for the Nations Institute, I start dating this guy that I thought I was going to marry, and things just go really sour. Our relationship was extremely toxic. I obviously had all this stuff that I needed to heal from, but I wasn't willing to confront. He had his own junk going on. It was just this perfect storm of all this crap that was coming to the surface, and I could no longer avoid it. And so I start processing through all of this around the same time that I had just finished writing Waking Up. And again, I'm like, we're not going to talk about this. This will just be my own thing. I'll deal with on my own time. But at the same time, I'm preaching this message of vulnerability and sharing your testimony, and God can use your story. But in my own life, I was thinking everything except this, everything except my abuse. That doesn't need to be brought to light. That'll just be my little secret. This relationship I'm in comes to a head where finally I get to a point where I cannot avoid the inevitable, which is like, we are a mess. We both need help. We both need healing. I end up telling my parents about the abuse. I actually can't hide this as well as I thought I could because it's starting to overflow. It's starting to leak out onto everything in my life. I just was not in a healthy place. So I started going to counseling, healing from the sexual trauma, trying to reconcile this idea that I finally had of my faith that, maybe I don't have to be a perfect Christian. God can use my story. But what if it's something like this? What if I'm really, really broken? Like, can he even use that? Like, what would people think if they knew that about me? And I really didn't know how to hold that tension of like, ugh, Christians don't really talk about this. You know what I mean? Because like I'm trying to build this ministry and be this person and this voice for hope and faith. But I have this thing over here that I want to talk about because it's really icky and I don't know how people would receive it, and it's kind of taboo, and I don't know what to do with that. Fast forward a little bit, I start healing from this. I meet Christopher. He and I date long distance when I did YWAM. I did the short-term mission school, came home, we got engaged, married, and I'm doing better. 2020 rolls around. I had just had our son Jude, and I feel this stirring in my heart. Like I have this renewed sense of purpose after I've gone through this season of healing. I am now a wife, I'm now a mom. And what does this look like to embrace even this part of my story? I remember getting to this one point in my journey, and I felt this gentle invitation from the Lord. I will use anything you give to me for my glory. And anything you hide, that's really just robbing you from healing and freedom and me from getting glory and in the work that we've done. And so I had to get to this point where and I want to preface this by saying like you don't have to spill your guts. You don't have to share every detail of your life. But because I had had this healing work in my heart and I could talk about my experience with trauma in a way that didn't feel raw and it didn't sting to the touch, like the scar had healed over, for lack of better words. And so I had this invitation from the Lord that was like, what do you think? Like, are you ready to share this piece of the story? You are at a place of healing. And of course, like it'll be a lifelong journey. It's not like a place of perfection, but you are at a place of being well, spiritually, mentally, physically, in that place. I feel God inviting me into this new chapter, and it's terrifying. But I feel like this is a part of what he wants to do with my story and how he's going to get glory. And so I decided in 2020 to launch Bywords. And if you haven't heard the story, I think it's like the first or second episode where I share the full story about this and what it means to me. But Bywords comes from the verse in Revelation 12, verse 11, that says, they overcame by the blood of the Lamb and by the words of their testimony. That has been my story. Like I have seen God over and over again use people's stories and use my own story to bring healing, to bring freedom, to make a difference. Like it really does cause this ripple effect when we embrace our stories and share our testimonies. And what's really beautiful that I share in my book is that I learned when I was at Christ for the Nations, I had this professor and he shared one time that the word testimony, like we hear that and we usually think, oh, it means to say it again. It means to share your story, right? And it actually means to do it again. So when we share our testimony, we are actually releasing the same power that worked in our lives to work in the lives of those who are hearing it. It's like this activation of Holy Spirit power to do it again and again and again. And that's what causes the ripple effect. And so that's what Bywords means to me. Our freedom, our overcoming is twofold. The first part is that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb. That's the finished work that Jesus did on the cross on our behalf. Like it is finished. We overcome because of what he did. And we continue overcoming by the words of our testimony. And so that's what Bywords is all about. In the beginning, it was so cute, y'all. Like if you were around in the beginning, like the OG Bywords days, wow, like we've come a long way. It started as a Facebook community group where I would just share tidbits of my process. Like I wanted to create this hub for other women to come and process the real raw moments of faith and like talking about these hard topics that maybe are a little taboo or not mentioned as much in the church world. And like, do good Christians talk about this? Do good Christians struggle with this? Like, how do we hold both the tension of being a good Christian, whatever that means, and also like the real life struggle of being a human in this life, right? And so I wanted to create this hub where women could come and find resources because in my healing journey, I went to counseling, I talked to mentors, I read books, I wrote books, I listened to podcasts, and I reached in every direction to find these things to help me stay strong in my faith and hold on to hope. And so I wanted to create a place where women could come and find that in one place, as well as community, which is a huge part of it. I started inviting my friends into this. We would have these monthly free workshops and trainings where my friends would come and teach on all kinds of topics like purpose in marriage and time management and all kinds of things like that. And I loved it so much that I was like, you know what? I would love to turn this into a podcast format where I can share more women's stories and have more conversations like this because I love the community aspect and I love how we're able to engage with each other this way. And I want to put out more content like that. And so in 2021, the Bywords podcast was born and we have been doing exactly that. I will say, man, if you go back and look at some of the early episodes, you can really see the journey and the discovery that we have been on because in the beginning I was so excited to hear everyone's story that we would just talk about it all. And it was great. Like I had so much fun with those episodes. Like we had episodes about like the mental effects of acne and interior design and like how your home, how your environment affects you, how it affects your mental well-being and business and social media and all kinds of things. But it's so beautiful to see how God has continued to take me on this journey and refine the message and the vision, even through my own life. Like, I feel like Bywords has kind of grown up with me because if you've been around for a while or you guys know, like my story didn't end there. I didn't get to this point of like writing my books or launching Bywords and then it was done. The story continues, the struggle continues, the brokenness of our humanity continues. During the early years of Bywords, the podcast, I started going through my miscarriages. I had a miscarriage that was very sudden and shocking, and I didn't expect it. And so I ended up taking a break from the podcast. And most of you know, I had 2 more miscarriages after that. And so even that has been another level of just processing with the Lord and relearning what this idea of purposeful living looks like, because what I used to think was purpose was this beautiful life of having it figured out in this moment of arrival and overcoming where everything is beautiful and sweet and all we have is testimonies of overcoming. But now where I find myself in my life and in my faith and relationship with the Lord is that so much of this purpose that we are called to is being with Jesus, abiding with him in the process of everyday, messy, holy faith, and being honest about that with him and with a healthy community of believers, like operating as the body. Like that is how we get healthy. That is how we live purposefully. We can't do it alone. Y'all have heard it a million times by now. Say it with me. We can't do purpose without people. We need each other. And so what I used to think about purpose, it's changed a lot through the years, but where I find myself now, 4 years later from starting this podcast, having conversations with so many incredible women who have come honestly to the table with their own testimonies and stories of real faith, it has just encouraged me and it has built my faith in ways that I never imagined possible. I hope that it has done the same for you because, man, it's more than just being a good Christian, right? It's more than just knowing what the Bible says and having the right answers. And it's so much more about like taking the everyday. Oh man, I got to read this verse again. I've been coming back to this verse over and over again, but it just is such a reflection of what true, everyday, real, messy, honest, holy faith is that I just keep sitting in it. I just have to soak in it. It's Romans 12, 1 and 2. And I love what it says in the Message version. So here's what I want you to do, God helping you. Take your everyday, ordinary life, your sleeping, eating, going to work, and walking around life, and place it before God as an offering. Embracing what God does for you is the best thing you can do for him. Don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit into it without even thinking. Instead, fix your attention on God. You'll be changed from the inside out. Readily recognize what he wants from you and quickly respond to it. Unlike the culture around you, always dragging you down to its level of immaturity, God brings out the best of you, develops well-formed maturity in you. That is what I have seen over and over again in my own life and in my story, is that a faithful, loving, kind God has stepped into my mess before I was perfect, before I had any understanding, before I had anything figured out. And he just wants me to bring what I have each day and walk with him because he leads the way, he guides us, and the Holy Spirit is just such a kind friend. This faith journey isn't easy, but there is an ease to it when you realize that it's not up to you, that we have a God who is present with us. We have the Holy Spirit who is a constant comfort and helper. This is what it's all about. And that's my heart going forward for Bywords is that we would just continue in this honest conversation, these thoughts and struggles from everyday real life faith before we ever get to the point where we want to be, like that middle ground in between meantime space of life and faith together. And God shows up there every time. Like I'm just so grateful for a God who continues showing up for me when I don't get it right. We just continue growing and learning and doing this together. And it is just such a beautiful journey. So thank you guys so much for being here. I'm so grateful for you. If you haven't gotten a copy of my book, Waking Up, Living Open, it's on Amazon. I have it linked in the show notes as well. So if you want to go back through my journey and get more of the details and more of the revelations from my early faith life, it is there for you. If you ever need support, if you have questions, I'm here for you. More than anything, just thank you so much for being here, for being in the messy middle with me. I love you guys so much, and I feel so hopeful and excited for what's to come. 4 years of Bywords, man. That we've come a long way, and I feel so expectant for what the next 4 hold, and I'm just so grateful that you're on the journey with me. I love you guys so much. I'll see you right here next week. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to tune in to another episode of the Bywords Show. I love having you here, and your support truly means the world to me. If you enjoyed this episode, would you leave a quick review? It really helps our community grow and reach more women. If you want more, you can shop my books, Waking Up, Living Open, and Love Is on Amazon, and be sure to sign up for my email list so you always get the latest news. I can't wait to chat again soon, but in the meantime, be sure to come hang out with me on social media, and remember, I'm cheering you on.